Hey Zach, I just wanted to tell you that you shouldn't quit.
Thanks, man. Quit what?
Hello everyone. I'm thankful that you're here with us today. Thankful that you tuned into this Bearing Up podcast. I'm Joshua Hester, and I am co-hosting this season with Zach, who is uh, the manliest of men,
Whoa.
and one of
No
one
one has
of
ever said that about me.
one, um, no, Zach had this idea for this podcast a long time ago, and he decided that he wanted to encourage young ministers, and I'm thankful that he did.
Yep.
So today we're going to talk about reasons why ministers quit. This is going to be a two-part podcast, and today we're going to mention some reasons why ministers could have quit during COVID. We're going to mention some other ones as well why ministers quit.
Yeah. I think that when we talk about ministers and we're talking about paid ministers, that's their career, that's their job. But just because we're talking about that doesn't necessarily mean that if you're not a, minister by profession, that this episode isn't for you. Because I think that there's a lot of things that we can talk about in regards to each one of the things we prepared today that have some connection to the life of any particular Christian. I like to emphasize that we're all ministers in Christ, and so, there's certainly some things that cause us to give up in our pursuits to be of service in the church and for God's kingdom. So don't think that this episode isn't for you. It most definitely is.
Yeah. So my wife currently works at Heritage Christian University in Florence, Alabama, and they have a statistic. I was talking to one of the people, one of the men that works in statistics there. He does. Yes, yeah. He does a lot of things with numbers. He does a lot of things with the Heritage alumni and working with churches. And I really don't know what his job is, but I know he's really good at math and he does a lot of numbers. Yeah.
I don't know if I'm saying that right, but
statistician. I think so.
Statistician. I don't know.
Statistician.
Go ahead.
Yeah. He said, of all of the graduates from Heritage Christian University that went into ministry, he said of all of those that were doing ministry pre-COVID, 40% of those people are not in ministry now.
Really?
40%.
40%.
40% have dropped out.
That's nearly 1 in every 2.
Yeah, that's almost half.
Yeah.
Which there is a stat that I read earlier that out of all evangelical churches, 50% of people that start, let's say, go to ministry school or seminary or something like that, of all people that start in ministry, 50% will not retire from ministry. As in 50% will not continue in ministry for their whole lives.
Yeah.
So, which is a
Yeah.
crazy,
Mm-hmm.
a crazy stat. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I believe it. I mean, and I don't want us to think though necessarily like, yes, we're going to encourage you if you're a minister listening. We're going to encourage you not to quit, right?
Yes.
We're going to encourage you. Don't quit. Do not give up, no matter how hard it gets. We're going to encourage you not to quit. We also understand that there are sometimes some circumstances beyond our control. I think about Logan, who was on he hosted the first 3 seasons of this show with me, and he was just kind of, because of family, he wasn't able to move anywhere else, and because of his situation, there just wasn't opportunities for him to have a paid role in the city where he was, and couldn't, because of their circumstances, he couldn't leave and go move somewhere else and get another job. So sometimes it is beyond your control. But we want to encourage you not to quit if it's within your realm of control. Like if this is a matter of whether or not you think that you should, we think that you shouldn't. And so I just feel like that's kind of important to acknowledge here too, because I know that there's probably a small number of those in that 50% that they really can't help the situation that they're in. But I feel like probably the majority, it comes down to their decision. I don't want to do this anymore. And so that's what we're kind of talking about, right?
Yeah.
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 So we're focused on them.
And I understand that there might be instances where, like you said, there, even though it is within our choices, we have been, or ministers, paid ministers, have been pushed to the point, or have reached a spot in their own lives, whether it be with their families or spiritually, to where, yes, they have a choice, but there are moments where I understand that the best choice is to not be in paid ministry, for whatever reasons.
Nevertheless, we're going to tell you not to quit.
Right. Yeah. And here's the thing: we're not going to be able to cover every single flavor of reasons.
Yeah, we got 2 episodes to do, but we're still not going to be able to, we're not going to get it in just 2 parts.
Yeah, because in each situation there are totally different things. So these are kind of hitting the high points, I guess, or hitting
general things.
For me, I mean, this is 2 paid ministers' opinions on why. So this might be coming from us as well. I definitely, some of these are coming from me, as if I were going to quit, these might be some of the reasons why. So
don't quit.
Yeah, but don't quit. And initially, I want to talk about the fact that, like I said, the heritage statistic, 40% have dropped out essentially since the start of COVID, or when COVID hit.
So that's like a catalyst for a lot of it.
Yeah. There have been a lot of paid ministers, and even, if you're a deacon serving in a role, I know of a lot of deacons that have stepped down in the past year because of different reasons that in my mind pertain to COVID. So this is all types of ministers. So for me, talking about myself, I graduated from Fareed Hardman in 2019, May of 2019, and then the spring of 2020 is when the moon fell and the world fell apart and all that stuff. And for me, I had an idea of what ministry looked like. My role is associate minister, which means I do youth ministry and college ministry and senior citizen ministry and all the ministries. And I had in my mind what that looked like. And I remember in January I had these big, long spreadsheets of long-term ministries that I was planning on doing. And I had made like year-long schedules, a schedule for senior citizens, when we would go do stuff, and for the teenagers, and then the church schedule. And I just kind of had it all in my mind. To be in ministry for 6 months, I felt like I had it figured out pretty well, or at least the best that I could have. in 6 months' time. And then that all kind of changed. And I had to, all those spreadsheets and all those things that I had worked on, I had to put in the drawer, throw in the trash. And, and I remember there were moments where, you know, I wanted to be around people and I couldn't necessarily be around people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I know a lot of people, a lot of ministers, especially, um, and for me, like I didn't have the opportunity to preach every Sunday. So my ministry was events and it was people and it was all
Yeah.
of that stuff. So there was no avenue, or there weren't as many avenues that I could minister. Um,
Right. So this
and
leads us into number one, right?
yeah, number one, ministers might quit because they feel like they can minister more if they actually weren't paid ministers.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a feeling that I specifically had. As a representative of the church with COVID, we felt like if we had events and people got sick, that wouldn't be good. If I
Mm-hmm.
planned something and half the congregation got COVID and people died, there could be negative impacts of that.
Yeah.
So, for instance, I didn't really have people over at my house because of that. I didn't do a lot of things that I felt like if I wasn't a paid minister, I could have had people over at my house. I could have spent more time planning events and doing things. But because I was a representative of the congregation, and there was a lot of fear of what if we do something and there's negative consequences. Um, there were times where I feel like I could have ministered more if I wasn't if I
Mm.
wasn't a paid minister. If I had a secular job and just chose to do ministry in
Yeah.
my spare time.
So you're saying you kind of like you feel like you would have less accountability to the elders if you
Yeah,
didn't like it wasn't your job.
right.
Yeah. I mean, I get that in a sense, but they're still the shepherds over everybody else too. Of course, they wouldn't say that you're doing anything unscriptural if you're just somebody that's having people over their house, and you know. But like if you're the minister and they're kind of like, well, this is the direction that we're gonna go, with the
Hmm.
leadership, then it is kind of you're in a hard place because it's like, well, I don't want to not listen to my elders, but you know, I do want to do this. And so, yeah, I guess if you're not in that paid position, it's like, well, I could still not listen to my elders, but I don't know. I feel like that would probably still not be a good thing, even if you're not being paid. But like, I don't know. I can see that there's definitely tension and there was a battle that a lot of people had. Um, sometimes I think about this in a different way. Um, you know, people in the secular field, they're around people that they can evangelize to. When you're a minister, it's hard to meet people that are in the world unless you go to the grocery store or the coffee shop.
Hmm.
Like because you're at the church building or you're in church people's homes or you're visiting church people in the hospital. It's like I could do so much more if I worked in a secular field and worked with people who are lost. I could be an impact on them every day. And uh, you know, so I could definitely see a pull in that direction too. In that way, I could do more. If I wasn't, in this role, I could, I could reach more people, or I could, shine my light in a different way if I worked in the secular work.
Yeah, and I think about, um, like I said, a lot of this is based off of my experience and even experiences of people that I've talked to. Um, Unfortunately, when COVID was happening, I'm 25 years old, so I am less worried or even concerned, as opposed to someone who is elderly, who is more at risk
Hmm.
of becoming sick and it being more serious. And it's interesting, the name of the title of elder, it means old. Okay, so so I can definitely see where a younger person like myself was way more ready to get back, doing events and doing things
Yeah.
because I was less concerned or less worried, as opposed to some people who are older and more at risk, and more at risk of getting sick and it being more serious. And I saw a lot of struggle between younger ministers, fresh ministers, and working along either an eldership or a group of men that were older
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
of their own personal views on like their level of worry with COVID personally.
Yeah. The first church that I worked with outside of uh, outside of when I graduated college was an excellent church. I loved them incredibly, but I offered a evangelism opportunity, and I put a bunch of like work into it, and was like, this would be a great thing that we could do. And it was in a tourist town, and it was for a tourist week. And they said, well, that's not really a good idea, because you're not really reaching people around here. You're talking to people that are going to go off, and they're not going to be around here, so it's not really going to be helpful for the church here. And it like kind of it like it it hit me in such a way that I was like, well, I'm just not going to play any more evangelism things. And that was
Mm-hmm.
that was a very immature thing that I did, and I took it personally. But I was fresh out of school, and like I was like, I just, you know, I came up with this idea and thought it was a great idea, and then I was turned down, and I hadn't really experienced being turned down on ideas very much. So I was like, oh, I don't know how to handle this. This kind of sucks. But it can have that effect, especially like you said on young ministers. They come out of school or they're fresh and new, and they're like, I want to get involved, I want to do, and I want to do, and then you had COVID happen, and you have the elders or the leadership say, we got to put things on hold, and there's not you can't do the stuff that you want to do, and it's not time, and we have to wait. We have to consider everybody else, and you know and I could see how that frustration may make it feel like, and and sometimes I think because there's a lapse in communication, the young minister may say, well, they must not really care, and now they have something against the elders, and they've got
Mm-hmm.
something against the church or the leadership, and it makes them want to quit. It makes them just want to say, well, this is how it's going to be. I'm just going to not waste my time.
Yep. Yep. Um, Looking back on the situation, I mean, I see elderships all over the world just trying. They're just trying to keep the ship from sinking.
Exactly.
They're just trying to hold on, and as young ministers are not in the mindset of holding on. They're in the mindset of moving forward.
Yeah,
And
let's grow, let's grow, let's grow, let's grow.
yeah,
I'm still like that.
yeah. So for young ministers, I think that was a very difficult or frustrating thing to come along with. Especially like I said, for instance, I was out of school for 7 months and had prepared and worked and was doing lots of things, and all of a sudden it was like,
Yeah.
no more. um, yeah, I think as ministers, we battle. The way I put it is, we battle on the hills, or we battle on big things, as in, if I'm a youth minister and I decide, hey, it would be really good for our kids to go to Bible camp during the week, or during the summer for a week. I have to battle in, presenting that to the eldership, and presenting it in a way that hopefully they would say yes. I would have to present that to the deacons over the youth. I would have to present that to the parents, and then to the kids, hoping that they would like to go. Um, and that's a big thing to prepare for. And like I said, that would be a hill that you battle on, because you would say, hey, I think this event or this thing would be really good to do. And you battle on the hills and you rest in the valleys. And during COVID, um, I think a lot of ministers experience that you're battling on the hills, but also in the valleys over little things that you shouldn't be having to battle for.
Mm-hmm.
You were, and I think a lot of ministers are frustrated. Like I said, it seemed like everything was a battle.
Yeah.
So, um, so yeah, I think that's possibly a reason why some ministers have quit in the past 2 years, 2 years, 2.5 years. Um, Also with COVID, going on to our second topic, is the extra job responsibilities that came along when COVID hit.
Mm-hmm.
You no longer was just preaching a sermon. It was, okay. Let's get the Facebook Live and the YouTube Live.
We all
And
became televangelists.
yes,
Every one of us did.
yeah. Uh, Technology became very important overnight. Um, was there a big transition for you into that, or were you
Oh yeah.
already?
I mean, like, I've done stuff with video before and all of that, but like, I mean, it was just a big, and it still is not perfect. Like, I have to use my laptop. We don't have a great system or anything like that. I did it with my phone, and people were saying, well, the audio's not good on it. I was having problems with that. And and I do it all. I set it all up. You know, and if I'm not there, it just doesn't get streamed. If I'm out for some reason, sick, or you know, if I take time off or something like that, it just doesn't get streamed because and that was the thing. At the very beginning, uh, we did parking lot worship,
Hmm.
and it was hot. um, but I stood outside and I did the song leading and the prayers and the leading the Lord's Supper, and I did every bit of it to start out with, because we didn't know how big this thing was or how transmissible or anything. We didn't know anything about the virus. So
Hmm.
like, it was, everybody stayed in their cars, and I I stood out there and did that, and it was just like, wow, there's a whole lot that goes into this. There's a whole lot of extra stuff that you have to do now, uh, and yeah, you could very easily get burned out with a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, and like I said, it's each person has their own experience. I was talking to a friend of mine when COVID first hit, and he said, "Well, thankfully, 6 months ago, we started live streaming anyways because we thought it was important." So,
Well, there you
so
go.
he didn't have to jump that hurdle all at once. They did that before, but like here, um, we didn't live stream for a long time. We would record we would record on Thursday the whole worship service, and then on Sunday um, Sunday when we met in person, the recording would go out to everyone at home. So so instead of live streaming, we did the worship twice.
Yeah, yeah, I remember you doing that. I was like, man, that's a lot of extra you got to do.
Yeah.
And you had to like get your lessons like done by Wednesday, right?
Yeah, Wednesday, and then we recorded
Yeah.
Thursday morning.
So you have half a week to do all the preparation that usually you'd have a week to do.
That is, yeah, and
Yeah.
I mean, like, and that's with both. I mean, Rodney, the pulpit guy here, he would have to have his Sunday morning and Sunday night done. I mean, on Wednesday,
Mm-hmm.
um, and you weren't able to start on next week's because you had to preach them again on Sunday.
Yeah.
So yeah, it and then trying to. I think we were a week ahead, if I remember right. We would. So like if you had the devotional on Wednesday night,
Mm-hmm.
you would you would do that, and then I remember Wednesday or Thursday morning I would come in the office early and do the devotional for the next week. Um, it was a crazy schedule, and
Yeah.
there were a lot of people that had crazy schedules because none of us knew what we were doing, and
Mm-hmm.
with all this, we didn't know what was best. We didn't know what better options were.
Yeah. And
Um,
and something too, like you didn't just have to make calls to the shut in, you had to make calls to everybody.
hmm
So I mean like you're doubling up on that. I mean there was just a lot of things that were put on ministers and elders and church leadership. There was a lot that was put on them, um, and I could see how that could be very frustrating to a lot of people. In some ways it was encouraging to some. I think at first it was to me because it was like we're still doing stuff. We're still trying to do our best, and you know there was a lot of wake up about what worship is, and you know the things that we can do, and but at the same time, you know I could see how all of these come in and at once, and nobody knows what they're doing, and nobody knows how to handle it. You know, it could cause a lot of problems with some folks, and yeah, it the simplicity of the schedule is flipped on its head, and now you're having to adapt, and it's like I don't know.
yeah, it's. I mean, I remember Zoom Bible classes. Like we
Yeah,
did that,
we did that
did
too.
that for a long time, and those were always interesting um, because you have several people, talking in class, and because they're on Zoom, they're not hearing the other person. I remember one time I asked a question, and four people answered at the same time, and continued answering because they weren't listening; they were just talking. Uh, it was pretty funny because in a class, you're sitting in class, two people speak up at once, and there's this moment of like, you go, you talk. Over Zoom, you don't have that. So, yeah. Um, I think about the fact that, you said y'all did parking lot worship
Yeah, yeah.
for a while.
Mhm.
So did y'all set up speakers and all that stuff?
Mhm. Yeah, and that was all stuff that like I had. So I had to I brought my own speakers and set up the audio and did all of that, and you know it was a process each week. I had to get out a table to put Lord's Supper stuff on, and you know fortunately we had old songbooks because we got new songbooks recently, like within the past couple of
Mm-hmm.
years, and so we gave our old songbooks. So you pick one and leave it in your car and don't bring it back up. You keep it.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of thing. So that was kind of nice, but yeah, it was a process. The whole deal.
Yeah, I remember when we started going back Sunday morning and Sunday night, we would have a crew come in the afternoons and would clean the building um, every Sunday afternoon.
Oh
Because we
yeah,
didn't know, you didn't know how, if COVID was still in the pews and you didn't want, you know,
yeah.
people getting it from each other. Um, And I think um, something that we wouldn't even say is job responsibility. I mean, it is a job responsibility, but the thought of ministering to people, you minister to people through getting to know them, through sharing life, sharing life with them, um, and you know, there was just so much extra that you had to do to be able to be close to someone, to be
Yeah.
able to actually minister
Yeah.
to someone, to actually show them, who Jesus is. Um, there were moments where it felt like you were running on a treadmill as opposed to running down the road, running and getting somewhere. Um, so I could see how that could be hard on a minister. A friend of mine, just like, you said that you had to do most of the worship
Mm-hmm.
stuff. He would get to the church building early, and he would set up the live stream for class, and he would record class, and then after class he would go back upstairs to the crow's nest and turn that live stream off and turn on the one for worship, and then he would go and do all the worship stuff. That way he was the only person up at the podium, and then afterwards he would upload those to the different Facebooks and YouTubes, and
Yeah. This
it
is a
became
lot.
very difficult.
And kind of even going beyond COVID, like sometimes, there's unreasonable expectations, and maybe they seem unreasonable, maybe they're perfectly reasonable. You just have a lazy minister.
It's true. Yeah.
But it just the job responsibilities sometimes can just get to be a lot, and so there are some that quit because of that. That's true. I would say, if this was a problem that you struggled with, it would just need to be something that you should talk about with your church leadership, with your elders, and say, you know, this is where I am as far as what I feel like I'm called to do. I'm called to be involved in these sorts of ministries, but I feel like it's unreasonable for me to head up worship, evangelism, youth ministry, visitation. Like
Yeah.
to be the leader and like the designated overseer of all the things. Like, there's got to be, and on top of all that, I've got to figure out the live stream and do that, and I've got to figure out, you know, all the other stuff. And so if that's a problem that you have, don't quit. Talk to your leadership. Talk to the men or the elders where you are, and just say, let's talk about these expectations some, and maybe we can try to delegate and give others opportunity to serve. I'm looking forward to the rest of this episode, but before we do, let's take a quick break. Thanks everyone for watching or listening today. We ask that you please like, share. One of the best things you can do is comment. Just say, Joshua, you look pretty today, and no, if you comment though, it helps with the algorithms. It helps people to see our content more. So we're on Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble. If you want to watch the show, you can also listen on Apple Podcast or Spotify. We also ask that you'll check out the Ministry League app, the Ministry League Network. We're partnered with them, and you can also listen to the podcast there along with other podcasts that are done by members of the church. And so we ask that you'll check that out for all kinds of Christian resources. And please consider checking up the Bearing Up shop. I am wearing today our pro-life t-shirt from our Rep Your Convictions product line. And so if you are interested in that, not everything says Bearing Up on it. Some things do. But go ahead and check that out, and you can represent your convictions, represent your convictions in Christ and in your faith. So that's a great thing that you can do. And everything that is put into that goes into spreading the message about bearing up and helping our podcast to grow. So we appreciate your support with that again, and your support just with listening, tuning in today, and joining us for this conversation. So let's get back to it.
So, we were talking about right before the break about expectations and communication. We talked a little bit about communication with leadership, with expectations, and that goes into number 3 very well. If someone was brand new to ministry, they could wonder, was ministry always going to be this way? Is this how it's supposed to be? Is this what the rest of my life is going to look like? I know I asked myself those questions several times. And a lot of young ministers did not have the foundation of knowing what ministry looked like in a normal circumstance or in a normal world. And I know normal is relative. Like, normal now is different than it was 4 years ago.
Oh, and it's strange with the, not strange, but it's different with the autonomy of the churches. Like, each church can have its own culture, its own, way of doing things. So, yeah.
Yeah. And, I just think about how when COVID hit, something I didn't realize is that I knew that everyone was struggling, but I felt like as a new minister, I was really I was really struggling. Like,
yeah.
I don't even know what it looks. I mean, I'm trying to figure out what ministry looks like just in general. And now here we all are trying to figure out what ministry looks like now. So we were all in this boat of, we have no idea what we're doing, but we're doing something.
No, like, nobody had an idea what they're doing, but somebody fresh in ministry really didn't know what they.
Yes.
And for me, it was kind of like I was working part-time, before COVID, but I went full-time as a minister here at like the end of May 2020.
Mm-hmm.
So like, it was like, all right, and I had taken a break from full-time ministry for almost 2 years. And, so I'd done part-time stuff, but it was like, all right, this is the full-time, this is the big deal. And, how do I do this with the way that things are, and that question is important. Is this how things, is this just how it's going to be now? Are we going to deal with, the attitudes and, the precautions and, all of the other stuff that come from all of this? This is a challenging time to become a minister. I know it was. I mean, for me, for you, for
everybody.
The
whole world, actually, it was a challenge. But I remember at the end of 2020, I had hit the mark where I had spent more time in full-time ministry with all this COVID crazy than without. And that's when I really asked the question of, is this it? Is this what it's supposed to be? Is this how it's supposed to be for the rest of ministry? Because I experienced more of this than the other. And I'm sure that there were a lot of people that that asked those same questions.
Mm-hmm.
Just trying to figure out how to do life and ministry and everything.
On this topic, I've tried to kind of put my 2 cents on how we can expand all these ideas beyond just COVID, because COVID was the big thing that I feel like has made people question, like, is this how things are going to be from now on? Are we going to be socially distancing from now on? Are we going to be, doing the disposable communion cups from now on? Are we gonna? I mean, there's all those little things. Um, but I think sometimes when we're young in ministry, one of the things too, because ministers were quitting before COVID, in rapid numbers. Um, it those statistics with the COVID stuff, that's crazy. But they were quitting before too. Um, and one of the things is like they wonder if things will always be this way when they jump in and they make mistakes and they jump in and it's not what they expected and they jump into it and maybe they don't uh, they feel like there's some things that are challenging to them that they didn't realize were going to be so challenging. um, and there's a lot of growth that takes years in order to be an effective minister. You're not going to be I'm just going to say this out front. You're not going to be an effective minister when you first get started. You
Mm-hmm.
think that you are. You went to school for it, maybe. Maybe that's where you went and you did something like that and you feel like, well, I'm prepped and I'm ready, and you jump into it and it's like I'm getting ridiculed a lot more than I thought I would. I'm
Mm-hmm.
I'm facing some challenge I never thought I would, and it's like, is this just how it's going to be forever? Am I going to feel this way? Am I going to not? Um, is it just going to be this hard? Is ministry just going to be this hard forever? Uh, and so I would, regardless of how, if you're thinking along these lines, you know, don't quit, because things do get better and we learn and we grow and we start to, I guess the way that I like to put it, you still got a tender heart, but you develop a thick skin.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good thing. That's a necessary thing in ministry. But you start out, everybody starts out with nice, smooth, unscarred baby skin that is so thin. Somebody says something to you, and you're questioning whether or not you should do it. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, so get that thick skin and keep trying. Have that tender heart and press on. Yeah, it might be bad at the moment, but you don't necessarily need to give up.
Mm-hmm.
But
And I
go ahead.
think no,
Oh,
no.
go ahead.
I was just saying. I think someone told me one time the most annoying person is someone that's fresh out of college,
Oh yeah,
because they've gone home, they've slept for a month, and then they're not now they're going to change the world, and
yeah,
everyone else is like, okay, sit down, be quiet. you know, you got some learning to do.
yeah,
And I think people get into ministry because, I mean, people are Christians because they love God, and in their Christian walk, they want to share God with other people. They want to bring other people to Jesus. So for someone who is a paid minister who has given their life to do that, um, you get into ministry hoping that you can change, that you can share Jesus with people, and through you, Jesus can change lives of people. Um, so you get into ministry and all that. It doesn't change as fast as what you would think, or
mm-hmm.
um, it's a lot slower going than what you think. And like you said, right out of school, you're not really an effective minister,
Mm-hmm.
um, because you haven't grown into what effective ministry looks like. You don't really know what effective ministry looks like. So, um,
But that leads us to number 4.
yeah, not feeling adequate, or not feeling like you're being an effective minister. Um, have you ever felt like that at any point in your ministry?
I would say, let me just say that we've got a list of reasons, and there's one in this episode and one in the next episode that I feel like hit closer to home with me, and this is the one in this episode. Uh, you know that you know sometimes it's very easy to be hard on oneself. You know, you have this idea that you want to save the world, you want to grow the church, and things aren't happening as rapidly as you want them to, or you get up and you speak and you say, well, that wasn't very good, or you have an event or something like that and it just flops, and there are things like that that happen, and it's just like, am I really cut out for this? And that can weigh incredibly heavy uh, on those involved in ministry. Am I really cut out for this? Am I, and it may be that you don't, you're not worshiping in a church that's full of Barnabases that help you with your self image and help you with your motivation to keep going. And I have a few that are pretty good encouragers, very good encouragers to me in Moultrie. Do I wish I had more? Of course I do. I mean, who doesn't wish to have more encouragers? But you know, um, but if you don't have that, and you don't have any voice telling you that I appreciate you and what you're doing, it's very easy to be so critical on oneself to say, I'm not doing anything very well at all, and I'm not being effective. I'm not doing anything of very much worth. And it's, you get up and you speak, and you poured your heart out, and somebody says, "Nice tie."
Mm-hmm.
It's like, that is such a severe blow. Like, that's not what I want you to tell me. You know, uh, you know, it's something that can weigh heavy on you, and you wonder, like, maybe my talent should be used elsewhere. Maybe I should do something else. Um, so that's kind of my feelings on it.
Yeah. For me, I've always noticed that and I know I shouldn't be this way, but it seems like one negative comment in my mind bears as much weight as five positive comments in my
Yep.
mind,
Oh yeah. Yep.
because the negative just sticks out so much.
Yeah.
And
I think we mentioned this on a podcast before. Logan and I, we talked about it. It was talking about our relationships with other people. And I think there was some research that said that one negative interaction with somebody takes 10 positive interactions with them in order for you to, like, forget about the thing that happened before, or not forget, but, like, I don't know, it's over, and it's like it didn't happen, you know. But I think that can be the same for ministry, like what you're saying.
and being a young minister making a lot of mistakes,
Yeah.
you do get some. I would say a lot of them are well deserved negative comments, but for me, they've been well deserved.
Well, yeah, and it depends. Sometimes there's a loving way to offer positive criticism, and there's also I had a lady one time, like, this is my first job again, and I disagreed with her, and she was kind of a crazy lady. I'm not gonna say who it is, but she had a problem, with the leadership before in the past. But she shouted at me and she said, "You call yourself a minister?" And I was trying to do something right. I was sticking up for a little kid that she was kind of being mean towards.
Mm.
And it was like, that hit me hard, because, like, that's what you want to be. You want to be the minister. You want to be, you want to do things right by people, and those negative things that can happen, they can stick with you in such a way that it's like, oh man, am I really cut out for this?
Yeah, and the people minister. What's cool about ministry is that Christians have
A lot
all
of
different
things.
personalities.
There's a lot of cool things about it. We should do an episode on that, like the blessings of ministry.
Yes, yes, agreed. Um, but the cool thing is that we all have different personalities, and I mean, I'm sure that there are some people that are very confident in their ministry and very confident in, the fact that they feel like they do a good job of ministry. Um,
I know a
that's
lot of
not me.
ministers like that too.
Yeah,
Maybe a little bit too much.
sometimes. Yeah,
Saying like, "Look how great I
yeah. You can take it too far and say, I am God's blessing, to the church. Yeah. So, um, but that's not me.
am."
I and for me, there's always that little voice in my head, and it's probably Satan saying, you're not good enough. Someone else would be better for the job. Someone else could be more effective. Um, so, and I think about, we want to. It's hard to gauge effectiveness in ministry. There could be a sermon that you preach that no one ever says anything to you, but that could be a major force in them turning their lives around or turning their lives to God. But you would never know that, you
Yeah,
know. Um,
right. And I think on that point, we have to realize at some level that when we get up and we preach the word of God, and it is, we have stuck to the scriptures, and we have done so with diligent study and preparation, and we've poured our heart out. It doesn't matter what anybody says because we came to do what we came to do. Um, and I count that as a win. I count that as a success, um, because people like, in the scriptures they didn't get recognition or encouragement every time. Like I think about Paul in Corinth. They're saying like, "Are you really an apostle?" I mean,
yeah,
like they see the works of Paul and see the ministry and the healings and the preaching, and they come around. They're like, "Are you really? Are you really who you say you are? Are you really apostle?" I mean, like on a personal level, I can't
yeah,
imagine what Paul would have thought when somebody would have if they said that. But like, did that stop him? I mean, it just made him push harder on him. you know,
yeah,
I'm we're gonna go to heaven together, whether you like it or not. We're gonna keep
yeah,
trying. We're gonna keep working, and so anyway.
yeah. I think of Noah a lot. I think about imagine spending dozens of years preaching
Mm-hmm.
and or preaching and telling people, and not one person, not one stranger that you meet, not one person that you talk to outside of your family comes to God.
Yeah.
Um, and you know, and what's interesting is that in today's time, if a preacher was at a congregation and that happened, we would say that unfortunately we would say that preacher was unsuccessful,
Mm-hmm.
or
Yep.
maybe he didn't do a great job. um,
Yep.
but I think about Noah and that his family got on the boat. The
Mm-hmm.
people that he was directly responsible for, they were brought to God. Um, so I think being Americans and being people that are like, living in a capital world and thinking about numbers all the time and thinking about growth as in numbers and all of those things, we see success differently than probably it was intended. Um, which then goes back to not feeling adequate, and not feeling effective as ministers.
Yeah.
um, which is why some ministers might quit. So, which is the point of this podcast is don't quit, don't give up. Um, so here at the end, I wanted to talk about quickly talk about these four things again and how um,
The application process.
some application for us, some encouraging words about these four things that we talked about. Um, Thinking about the fact that I feel like maybe I could minister more if I wasn't a paid minister. Maybe if I worked a secular job and was around other people all day. Um, if I wasn't limited in certain ways. The good thing about ministry now is that it's changing and it's evolving, and there are always new ways to minister to people. Um,
Yep.
uh, we were
That's
talking about during COVID. There was a small congregation in Texas that started watching our live streams and watched our live streams for 10 months or something like that. A congregation of, I think, between 30 and 40 people.
mm-hmm.
And that congregation started writing like the preacher letters and me letters, and I don't know. It was really awesome, and it was a really cool thing that happened. And even though there are moments where we feel like we could minister more if we weren't paid ministers, being supported by our congregation allows us to have all of our time given towards the advancement of the gospel.
Yep.
You know,
I don't think there's anything better than that. Yeah, personally.
Yep. From the time we wake up
Because
to the time we go to sleep.
we might say, and I will say this, we might say, well, if I was doing a secular job, I'll be more evangelistic, but then you do the secular job, and you find out that's much harder than you thought, because it's not like I'm just meeting people for the first time, meeting strangers, and I mean these are people you're going to work with.
Mm-hmm.
So like you start in your mind start saying like, well, maybe I won't mention something because I have to work next to this person, and and so like the secular job just becomes a secular job, and it doesn't result in you being more effective in ministry in another way. You set a good example, but you don't speak about Jesus, and so it's like, might as well just stay in ministry and dedicate all your time.
That's it.
To God. So
that's it. Thinking about all the job responsibilities that come along with ministry and how that has changed, in the recent past. Like I think about the live stream. We have a family here. They've been coming here for 6 or 8 months, and they come from a denominational background, and they were church hopping, but they were church hopping online. They were watching live streams.
yeah,
And from watching the service online, they said, the churches of Christ seem to align with the Bible as much as we can read. And then they started coming here and started meeting us, and now that whole family, they're all Christians.
that's awesome.
So I mean, that's
really
something that it might not have happened, without COVID and live stream and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I think about all the blessings that come with all these new inconveniences or new things that we have to do. And you touched on it a little bit before about expectations and sharing the load, and I think that a lot of it has to do with that, realizing that one man cannot do it all, nor should he do it all. It's
The
definitely a
apostles
team
didn't even
effort.
put that on themselves, which is
That's true. And they had,
what was it, Acts? I'm trying to think about how can we forsake the preaching the gospel. to serve tables. What was that? John Acts 4? Was that what?
X4?
Acts 6.
6. That's it.
Yeah. I don't know. I was thinking 4.
Number 3, the third thing we talked about of, if you were brand new to ministry, asking the question, is this what ministry is going to look like forever? Well, personally, for myself, I have found that it's not going to be like that forever. We're actually meeting in person now. We're actually doing events now. The congregation here had its first fellowship meal this past Sunday in almost 2 years.
Yeah, we're resuming ours too. We had started doing it, but then there was a bad uptick here, and then we stopped again. So we're starting back now though.
So, which is very nice.
Oh yeah, very
for me
nice.
Personally. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for somebody that likes to eat. No.
Yeah.
For somebody that enjoys the fellowship of other Christians.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful thing.
And then our last one, feeling inadequate or not feeling effective. Thankfully, the Bible is filled with inadequate people. Very people. If you look back at their stories, you say, "Are you sure God would use a person like that? Are you sure God would use that individual?"
The answer is always yes.
Yes, it is. I think about.
Would God use a prostitute?
Yeah.
Yes, He has. He's done it.
Yes.
More than once.
Yeah. I mean, you have David, who's a murderer and an adulterer, and you've got Jacob, who steals from his brother and lies to his father, and he becomes the father. He becomes Israel. He becomes the father of the people of God. You've got Moses.
I love the meaning of Israel, by the way. Wrestles with God.
Yeah.
So, because that kind of reveals like who is God using? People that wrestle with Him, people that didn't have everything together and didn't always do anything right, and very much right. Had a lot of weaknesses, and God used them, and it was through Israel that Jesus came. So
that's true. I think of
God can use you no matter what
if you let Him. So
He might use you in a negative way. He might, like Pharaoh. You could be Pharaoh. Yeah. Don't be a Pharaoh. Be a Moses.
Don't be a Pharaoh. Be a Moses. Yes.
You can complain, but let God take you anyway.
Yeah. Or even, I think of someone as big as Moses, and I think of his sister Miriam. Without Miriam, there would be no Moses.
Yeah. And then do you remember she tried to revolt against Moses? And
yes.
God plagued her.
You got leprosy. Yeah.
Yeah.
For 7 days, she had to go out of the camp.
But at the same time, like, he needed her. And Moses needed her.
Yep. Without Barnabas, there'd be no Paul. God uses us in. I'm sure Barnabas, when he took Paul under his wing, he never thought, you know what, this guy that I'm putting under my wing, he's going to write
the majority of the New
half
Testament.
of the New Testament or whatever. Yeah.
He's going to write more scripture than anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Barnabas is like, I'm not even going to have a book, in the Bible. So, yeah.
Unless he wrote Hebrews.
No. The world will never know. Yeah.
We will one day, I think.
That's true.
We'll ask God about Hebrews. It's going to be my first question. Not. Why do you love me?
Yeah, I don't know if that'd be my first question.
I'm just kidding.
I don't know. At that point, when I'm in God's presence, I don't even know if I care. It's like,
yeah. So now that I'm here, there's something that's really been bugging me. Who wrote Hebrews? Where did Cain's wife come from? Come on, man. Or anyone, any of their wives. Where do they come from?
Oh, their sister, I guess. I don't know.
Where Seth's
Um,
wives come from?
that's a good question.
Yeah.
But
Anyway.
as a young minister, it's. I think about the Jenkins Institute and how they encourage ministers, and they say don't quit. Um,
Don't quit on a
Jeff and
Monday.
Dale, what?
Don't quit on a Monday.
Don't quit on a Monday
The
or a
books.
Tuesday.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of them. Think about Jeff and Dale and how they've been doing a ministry a long time, and what it means for them to say, "Don't quit." Um, you and I have not been doing ministry like a long time.
Yeah.
You've been doing ministry longer than I have, so for all of those young ministers out there like ourselves, I will say, don't quit.
Yeah. And
God needs you.
I would say that one of the most pivotal little books that I ever read is by the Jenkins Institute, and it's very, very little. And I think I did it as a recommendation when we used to do recommendations on this show. But it's good. It's by the Jenkins Institute. I think it's.
What's the name of it?
I can't remember if it was. I think it's Dale Jenkins that wrote it. So if you'll search Dale Jenkins, it's called The Minister's Heart, and it's just a tiny little thing, and each page has like a sentence on it. That's it. That's it right there. I've got that too. It's right up there. But it's such a great little book, and it's been a while since I've read it. But the end, usually it makes me cry at the end because I remember what I'm doing and why I'm doing this, and I think that that's probably something else that we can kind of take away from this. Don't lose the heart behind why you started doing this in the first place. You know, it's very easy to lose that zeal that we had at first. But hold on to that, restore that. Remember, you know, I got into ministry for this reason. You know, I got into ministry because I wanted to lead people to Jesus. I got into ministry because I wanted to give my career to God. I wanted to give all to God. You know, I got into ministry because of such and such. Now, if you got into ministry for the money, you can just repent of that. uh, but seriously though, like don't forget why you why you jumped in the first place. Don't forget why you do what you do, because those reasons, those legitimate scriptural, God-based, God-centered reasons for doing what you're doing. I mean, those things can sustain you, because God sustains you, and there's never a good reason to give up on any of those things. So,
well, I appreciate you, Zach, and I appreciate this topic, and I think it is a very important thing to talk about, um, because I know Satan is the adversary of all Christians, but he is especially the adversary of those that minister, those that try to further God's kingdom. So,
yeah. Well, we certainly appreciate you tuning in. This is a little bit longer episode than the last several that we've done. So we appreciate you if you've made it this far. And we're going to close here with a prayer. And stick around, please, for the servant spotlight. So I enjoyed our conversation today, Joshua. Let's pray.
Always.
God, we thank you so much for this day, this time that we've had to have this discussion. And I pray, dear Lord, that ministers everywhere are reinvigorated and reminded not to give up, but to keep pressing on and keep fighting that fight of ministry and persevering in faith to keep going, because the world needs men who will stand up for you, that will make their lives, their careers about you. The world needs people that they can look to be leaders, to be guides, to be um, individuals who labor over your word, so that um, so that uh, good study is done for other people, so that the deeper things uh, of the scriptures can be understood in ways that challenge faith and help us all to grow. We thank you so much for Christ and his example for us, and his dedication and zeal, and help us to replicate that in our own ministries, whether we are the paid minister or not. Help us to reflect the work ethic and the devotion of Jesus in the way that we live. We thank you so much for his sacrifice for us and all the blessings that are available in him. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. The servant spotlight this week goes to Scott Jeffrey. He is one of our elders here, and I love all of our elders. I think they're all doing a great job. But he has stepped up to do a Bible class on Wednesday nights to kind of give me a break, but also because he really wanted to do it. He mentioned to me at the end of the year last year, "Hey, I've been studying this, and I would really like to teach it for a class for the adults." And I said, "Yeah, let's plan on it." So he is doing that, and he's done a great job to begin with, and so I appreciate him for doing that, and he's put heart into this. He's put in a lot of effort and a lot of work. So I appreciate him specifically, but I do really appreciate the elders here in Moultrie. So the servant spotlight goes to Scott Jeffrey today, but maybe as a little bit of an extension of that, the elders here in Moultrie, they're good, and they're fresh and new. They haven't been elders for very long, a couple years now. So um, it's new for them. Actually, it's not even been a couple years. It's been since it's been almost a year, I think.
Mm.
So, but they're doing a good job, and so there's your servant spotlight today. We thank you again for tuning in with us, and please be sure to check us out next week. We try to do these things weekly, so be sure to subscribe and share and follow us so that you'll be able to see the next episode as well. So, thanks again. Everybody have a great week.